So here I am talking to you. Last year I'm talking to you about the Shroud. This year I'm talking to you about Medjugorje. I don't understand how this all works out or how it worked out, but here I am again. And when I say again, because Medjugorje was kind of the beginning of my transformation and my walk in life. I went there in 1988 with a group from Curcio, including Father Ray Skenesny. I roomed with Father Ray. I saw Father Ray in his underwear. And we were blessed enough in this group. We stayed at the home of one of the brother-in-law of one of the visionaries, Ivanka. And we had an amazing experience. The whole week was an amazing experience. But the end of that experience, I'm going to show you at the end of this PowerPoint. This is something that not too many people have ever seen, but I think you'll enjoy it because every time I look at it, it knocks my socks off. But first, I'm going to give you some visual on Medjugorje itself. And we'll talk about Medjugorje from our trip. So I was there in 1988. A little more background. My wife and I went in 1990 with Father Leo Celano, and that's where I met Father Leo, and he became my second dad after that trip. I went there with my wife on our honeymoon, right? We went up to Carmel, did that, and then jumped on a plane with a bunch of people and went to Medjugorje as part of our honeymoon. And this last June, we went again as a part of a 35-year anniversary trip to the Amalfi Coast. And I told her we have to go to Medjugorje because we have to give thanks to Our Lady for all of the benefits and all of the blessings that we've had over all these years, which we have had an amazing number of good years together with our family and all of the other things that we've done. So let's get into the slideshow, and I'll share with you some of the things that we saw in Medjugorje. Little village. As you can see, it's built up a lot since 1988 when I was there. This here is kind of the center right here. You can see this, I don't know what you call this. I would call it like an outside pergola. It's a covered area where they have an altar. I'll show you some pictures of that later in the Shroud Zone. I wanted to give you a frame of reference. St. James Church is right here. That was the center of everything early on in 1981 when the apparitions began. And then around this, as it's built up, there's hotels. It's become very, very developed in the years since 1981. When I was there with Father Ray and that group, we stayed in a home right across the street. I could look out our window from our balcony and I would look right at the church. I mean, it was an amazing place. By the way, I spent 45 minutes speaking to Martin Sheen, who was there at that time in preparation of the movie Gospa. And that was quite an experience. By the way, he talked a lot about Charlie. He was concerned about Charlie back in those days, okay? It was a blessing. So my wife and I were there this last June, 2025. And so that's a picture of us together on the Hill of the Apparitions. And I'll show you a little bit more about this as we move along. Where is Medjugorje? It's in Bosnia-Herzegovina. But if you speak to the locals, they're going to tell you we're in Herzegovina. So there's this little pride thing. In Herzegovina, Bosnia-Herzegovina is kind of, it's right in the middle of what used to be Yugoslavia. Croatia is all around it. Dubrovnik, which is a great little town, is in Croatia. But you can see how Dubrovnik is kind of here in this little arm that goes down. Medjugorje is in Bosnia. It's about 70 miles away in the direction of Mostar, about 70 miles north and east from Dubrovnik, and it's about 15 miles from Mostar. Close to Medjugorje is a large Muslim community, Mostar being a big significant part of that Muslim community. By the way, it's a really neat little town to visit. The name Medjugorje means between the mountains. Between the mountains, okay? So let's talk about the mountains, okay? But before I get there, I think this is one of those quotes, and there have been so many. We're going to go through some of our messages. I'll share those with you, but this is one of the best ones. I came because the people here have a strong faith. So what's the message there? Faith. Because with faith, miraculous things can happen. So I wanted to share that, one of her early messages that she gave to the visionaries there. So we know about apparitions. You know about some of these: Guadalupe, Miraculous Medal, La Salette, Lourdes, Knock, Fatima. Those are all Vatican-approved apparitions. And there's a difference between a Vatican-approved apparition and a locally approved apparition, okay? Big difference. These are the ones that have had Vatican-approved, basically authorization or confirmation from Rome itself. The apparitions in Medjugorje were controversial early on. The local bishop was against them. There was a lot of controversy. There was a lot of questions. I mean, I had priests basically say, don't go, after I went, right? Which always made me a little suspicious about the priest. One of those no longer is a priest. There you go. But I couldn't understand what's the problem here, right? Until in September 2024, Pope Francis made probably one of the most important declarations of his papacy, where he basically said, go, 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 because this is a place of grace. And it was and is a place of grace. I've never experienced anything like Medjugorje. The grace there is something that you can cut with a knife. It's that powerful. You don't want to leave. It just grabs you. It's a reality that is hard to describe. And when you're in Medjugorje and you've experienced the peace of Our Lady that is there, when you come back here and you get off the plane, right away you go, whoa, there's a difference here. I like that better, okay? So he started it, okay? And now, in the 80s and the 90s, boy, was this the topic. I mean, I remember Yvonne came and they filled the basketball arena at UCI, filled it with people, overflowing. It was such a topical thing. And then it kind of got quiet until Pope Francis opened the door. Now, they have not given a Vatican full approval. That'll probably won't happen until that final 10th messages. Each one of these visionaries were given 10 messages. 2 of them are still don't have the 10th message. When that 10th message is given, we are told through the visionaries and through Mary that there's going to be a sign. Something is going to happen, okay? And we don't know what it is. But I can tell you right now, I think it's going to be good. St. James Church. This is a remarkable story. This church was built, well, I think it goes back into the 30s. It is a very large church for a very small community. And that's one of the things they talk about in Medjugorje. They built this enormous church in this little community of about 2,000 people. And obviously there must have been a reason for it, because ultimately it was entertaining large crowds of people. I mean, when I was there in '88, it was like that. It was amazing, the number of people. And when we were there in June, it was like that. Amazing number of people. And I'll share some more of that as we go through the slideshow. The inside of the church is huge. It's big. And it's just simple, but it's big. In the early days, this is where it happened. Always happened in this church, okay? Until the crowds got so big, they had to move out and they built that pergola thing that I showed you on the backside. And I'll show you some pictures of that because it's enormous. 20,000 people out there. But this is a remarkable church. It's beautiful inside. When they have Mass, it's full. It's full. The English Mass has always been around 10 a.m. I know that they've changed it over the years, but I remember when Robin and I were there in 1990, I remember at the end of Mass, I had some remarkable things that happened to me in '88 with Father Ray. I'll share some of that with you. But one of the best parts for me was when we were there in 1990, the first morning we went to Mass, and at the end of Mass, my wife wasn't Catholic at the time. And at the end of the Mass, they were going to have a benediction, and I said, I'll stay, and she wanted to go back to our house where we were staying. You always stayed in the early days in somebody's house. They didn't really have hotels. And so she left, and when she left the church, I just bowed my head, and I spoke to Mary, and I said, give her a sign if you can. If there's if that's appropriate, right? Just said, give her a sign, right? And as she's walking back to our house, she saw the miracle of the sun. What's the miracle of the sun? Well, in Medjugorje, at times, not for everybody and not all the time, you can look up and you can see the sun spinning in the sky. You can look directly at it. It just spins, and you've got little colors that are coming out from around it like a boundary. Happens to thousands and thousands of people. Just one of the signs. I'll show you some more, but it happens there, okay? Here's a funny story. This is a good pre-story, okay, before I go into this. So we were staying across the street from the church, and there was one day when I was walking in front of the church with our tour guide, and she said, look at the sun, look at the sun. And I looked up and boom, there it was. That was my experience, my first experience, was seeing the miracle of the sun. It reminded me of how they described Fatima, the miracle of the sun in Fatima, okay? And I'm looking up at this and I'm going, whoa, and I'm just looking at it. And I looked around and there's Father Ray. And he's sitting on a bench and he's talking to a couple ladies. And I went over to him and I said, Father Ray, look at the sun, look at the sun. And Father Ray says, I'm not gonna look at the sun. Burn my eyes, I'm not gonna do that. Burn my eyes, right? I'm not gonna look. Father Ray, look at the sun. I'm not gonna do that, I'm not gonna do that. So I looked over at our house because I could see the house from where we were standing, and here are 4 of the women that were in our group that are on the balcony. And so I go, okay. So something said, go tell them. So I ran over to the house, ran upstairs. I said, you guys, look at the sun, look at the sun. And they went, and they got hysterical. Okay. These 4 women just went hysterical, emotional, right, as they were looking at this thing. And I said, Father Ray won't look at it. I mean, as soon as I said won't, they were like down the stairs, out the front door, running across the plaza, and I'm trying to follow them, and they get up to Father Ray, and they go, Father Ray, look at the sun, look at the sun. He won't look. No, I don't need to look at that. I'm not gonna look at that. And right behind him is a daughter and the mother, adult daughter and mother, and they're standing there like this, right? So I said, Father, look at them. Look at them. And he did this. He goes, I'm going to burn my eyes. He goes like this. He looked up, and his arms dropped limp. And the expression on his face just went blank. I mean, it was like there was no blood in his face. He went through this. You could see something was happening to him when he looked up and he saw the sun, and he just got slain. It was one of the most amazing moments of my life to watch Father, and you know Father Ray, and right? Okay. Was he not a great priest? Well, that was the moment that he got nailed, okay? It was fun. And I was standing right there with him when it happened. So what do we got? We got 6 visionaries. Back in 1981, they were aged 17 to 10, okay? So some of them are 16 years old, 17 years old. And what they're doing is they're just walking down the street one day, and one of them said, look, and they said they saw her on the hill, and I'll show you a picture where they saw her. By the way, now they're all adults, 44 years later. This will be the 45th year, okay? What did they see? They saw her up on this hill, okay, that's part of Mount Podberdo, okay? And so, they got a little hysterical. They went back home. They told their parents. Their parents obviously didn't believe them. They came, but for whatever reason, something told them they had to go back the next day. They did go back the next day, June 25th, 1981. And when they went back, there was a group with them, and Our Lady appeared to them and basically said, come. And so they went flying up this hill, Podberdo, to this location, which now is marked by a cross. And this is where apparitions will occur now. They went flying up this hill. People were following up there, and all of the apparitions, that's where they began in 1981, June 25th, 1981. And that's the kind of rock hill that you're talking about. I mean, it's like rocky, big, heavy, thick rock. It takes a while to get up there, okay? So they went up there, and by the way, this is the Blue Cross, which is very famous because, without getting too much into it, the communists at that time, Tito and the communist government, and they did not like this idea of Mary appearing. They really persecuted the kids and the community, and even their parish priest. They threw him in jail for 6 months, Father Jozo Slavko. This is one of the crosses that marks a point in time where they had to hide. They went up to this point on the mountain because they were hiding from the police, because the police were trying to scare these kids into denying that this was happening. And by the way, this is exactly what happened to the apostles. They saw everything that's reported in Scripture. There was nobody that was going to convince them that what they saw wasn't true. They would be martyred before they would deny it. They saw it. Okay? It's the same thing as this. It's the same thing with Bernadette. It was the same thing with Francisco and Jacinto, right? And Lucia in Fatima. Nobody was going to tell them that they didn't see it, because they did. And so it was the same thing here. These kids were not going to deny what they saw, but they were persecuted. Locally a little bit, there was doubt going on as to what was going on, but they weren't going to deny what they knew and they saw. So she started appearing to them on a regular basis, daily. This is important. Remember I said between the mountains, there's Krešević and Podbrdo, okay? Krešević is this mountain. You can see the parish church and that mountain, and you can barely see it here, the cross at the top of that. It was a 28-foot cross that was constructed, started in 1933, finished in 1934, by a Franciscan with locals. They had to take cement up this incredibly steep hill to get it up there to build this. It took over a year. The cross was built to commemorate the 1900th anniversary of the death of Jesus. And this was something that Pope Pius XI had basically decreed. He said, build crosses around the world on hills. So this was one of those that resulted from that, okay? So Krešević, there's the cross, 28-foot tall cross. And many things have happened up there, many events. It's got an inscription that says, Jesus Christ, Redeemer of the human race, okay? So this is a landmark in Medjugorje. This is the Hill of the Cross, Krešević, the Hill of the Apparitions, Podbrdo, okay? Over time, there's been all kinds of manifestations, miraculous, whatever. I mean, and we have some pictures of those. I threw a few of them in here. What does that look like?
Sacred Heart.
A Sacred Heart, right? How about that one?
Jesus reaching out.
Right. Just an example. How about this one? I have actually on a DVD witnesses who saw this happen in December of 1990. See this?
Yeah.
She kind of appeared. She made herself somewhat visible. Okay? Now, keep in mind something, going back to the shroud, right? What does the shroud tell us? The shroud tells us that when the church says Jesus was fully human and fully divine, he had fully human, natural, physical. He had fully spiritual. God is spirit, right? He had the ability to be both. He could walk through walls. He could transfigure. This is reality. This is another example. They can come, they're in this other realm, this other dimension. I don't know, this heavenly, let's call it a heavenly dimension. It's a reality. How do we know it? We have evidence. We have evidence, okay? Physical evidence. There it is. It's an example of her appearing to the point to where people could see it, but they couldn't see it completely, okay? And when we get to the end of this, I'll basically show you what she was really doing with the kids, the visionaries, and what they were seeing, okay? So there's a good one right there. And then this miracle of the sun that I described earlier, where you can just look right at the sun, doesn't burn your eyes. Try it when you walk out here. Look at the sun for a moment. It doesn't work, right? That's what Father Ray was afraid of, right? I don't burn my eyes, right?
How long does the apparitions last?
Depends. Sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes. It depends. There's no such set time, and I'll share that with you when we get to the end, okay? So there's part of what now has become the common area because of the crowds that are there. I mean, enormous crowds, and you can see the pergola type thing with an altar up there. This is a very cool area. I don't think I can play this. It's too bad. I don't think this computer has the ability to play this. It's a video that I was hoping I could play, but it shows the crowds. There must have been at least 20,000 in that area when this was going on. This is another one, and the music's just incredible. What they have in the afternoon, they have rosary for an hour, multiple decades and multiple rosaries. Then they have Mass, and then after that they have adoration. It's really special, by the way, really special. There's the altar. There's part of the adoration, okay? Okay, what do you think that is? Look at that. What do you think's going on there? Confession. Like 15, 20 deep, 15 priests. Unbelievable. Like wall to wall, people waiting to get in line to do confession. It's had enormous impact on the Croatian community, that area. I mean, amazing. But this really cracked me up. I go, whoa. They're all there to go to confession. This is an area called the Resurrection Square. It's called the Statue of the Risen Christ, okay? It's a bronze sculpture, shows Jesus risen from the cross with his arms raised in victory while still bearing the wounds of the passion. It weeps oil. And so people will come up to it and they'll take a kerchief, a handkerchief, and they'll wipe it off of it, okay? And so we took a picture of this and then a couple other things I caught on camera, which are fun, okay? So we took a picture of the bronze statue, and this is what I picked up on it. A dove sitting at the top of it. Classic, just sitting up there, right? Because as I was talking about the peace, you can feel the peace, it's like palpable, right? I'll give you another example of what I'm talking about. See that? Kind of hard from where you are. German Shepherd, little puppy, right? They're out. Look at the German Shepherd. Out, okay? Like peace. He's completely chilled, right? And that's what you experience. I thought that was a great picture because it demonstrates what I'm trying to explain to you. It's like unbelievable peace that you feel there from her presence. And all of the prayers and all of the graces and everything else that's going on there. But that's a classic. He's down, right? He's down. This is another fun story. So when we were there in 1988, they took us to this church, which is the Immaculate Conception Parish. It's called St. Elijah's Church in T. Alina, okay? This is a church, when they took the pastor, the communists took the pastor, Father Jozo Slavko, and they put him in jail for 6 months. When he came out of jail, they had to transfer him to a different parish. So they transferred him to this parish, okay, which is St. Elijah's. And the reason why this is important is because he was there when the 6 visionaries then came at some point after he was transferred to visit him, okay? And when they came into the church, they saw this statue of Our Lady. And when they walked up to the statue and they looked at the statue and they said, that's her. Okay? There's something about that image from that statue that's special. But that's kind of a fun little side story. Do we know exactly? They know, they see Mary, but do we know exactly? No, but they said, that's her. And there's something about that image. It's a good one, okay? So, Maria is one of the visionaries, and I misspelled her name there, but she's one of the visionaries now that has apparitions on a regular basis. On June 25th, last year, this is her apparition. So we were up there on the mountain, okay? And there she is in the apparition. And of course, you know, the hill is full, okay? It's full because everybody's there to be there at the time that she's having this apparition. Now, having shown you all of this, now I need to get into what's the point, okay? What are the messages? What is Mary trying to tell us? So there are 5 stones of Medjugorje, okay? 5 stones. The spiritual weapons given by Our Lady for our time are these 5 stones. Just as David used 5 smooth stones to defeat Goliath, the Blessed Virgin has given 5 spiritual stones to overcome evil, to restore peace, and to help us draw closer to God. Okay? What are they? Prayer. As Peter was saying, prayer. I love that song that he composed because it emphasizes prayer. How many times in these messages does she say, pray, 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 over and over and over? Pray every day, especially the rosary. Prayer opens the heart to God and brings internal peace. So prayer, number 1. 2, the Eucharist. Go to Mass daily if you can, as often as possible. In one of these messages, Mary says, the Holy Mass is the greatest of all prayers. She said that in one of the messages, okay? How often do we think about that when we get up in the morning to go to Mass? The greatest of all prayers is the Mass. The Bible. Oh, I forgot. You guys are Catholic. We don't read the Bible, right? No, we're supposed to read the Bible. And she says, read the Bible on a daily. We're supposed to, as Catholic, read the Bible 15 minutes a day, right? That's one of her messages, read the Bible, okay? Fasting. She uses fasting, and here's what's interesting about fasting. As you know, some of the discussions that are going now about health and the importance of fasting. Fasting is not necessarily just spiritual. Now we're knowing that it's health related. It's healthy to fast, okay? And why is that? Because when our body is cleansed and we basically have an opportunity for our body to separate ourselves from things that maybe are getting in the way of our spirituality, like maybe bad things we're eating, right? She's telling us that that's an opportunity for us to deepen our prayer. My son goes on a 36-hour fast. He's a fireman, and he's trying to purge his body of toxins from fires and stuff. I said, 30 hours? That's crazy. He says, oh, Dad, it's amazing. He says, once you get over that, if you fast, once you get over that initial, I'm hungry, and then you break loose from it, there's a release, and you basically are free from those cravings. That's a liberating moment. She talks about fasting as being very powerful. And I think what she's talking about is use that to deepen your prayer, to have more powerful prayer. That's what she's calling us to do, okay? And then confession. I mean, the lines of people going to confession in Medjugorje it's notorious. It's always a huge line of people going to confession. How many of you go to confession every month? Awesome. That's the message. She says every month. Why aren't we? Why wouldn't we? Well, because we'd rather go to a secular counselor. Why go to a secular counselor when you can go to confession and you can get blessed and be given the power to overcome your difficulties and your struggles and your problems? It's a gift. It's one of the great gifts of the church. And by the way, my 20s and 30s, they may have been a little bit on the outside of things, right? I remember I hadn't been to confession in a number of years when I was in Medjugorje, and everybody's going to confession. It took me 2 days to get the courage, right? And I'll never forget the moment when I had this confession with this priest. I'll never forget it. And it woke me up to the power and the beauty and the sacrament of confession. What an amazing gift the church has given us. We need to use it, okay? But she's telling us that, right? Here's the message. Okay, so here's the fun part. But before we get here, I just wanted to read a few of the messages, and then I want to show you this. This is really the fun part, okay? So let me just read a couple of the messages. This is one of the books that I have that I've had on my bookshelf for years, okay? Without love, dear children, you can do nothing. Love. The most powerful force in the world is love, right? I mean, it is. It's the most powerful force in the world. With love, you can do anything, she says. Today, I call you to approach prayer actively. Prayer will be your joy. If you make a start, it won't be boring to you because you will be praying out of joy. Monthly confession will be a remedy for the church in the West. Monthly confession. Oh, here's a good one. They refer to Our Lady of Medjugorje as Our Lady, Queen of Peace. Peace. And we're not talking about military peace. We're talking about peace in your soul. The peace that comes from experiencing the grace, what's the grace? The grace is the power of love. It all boils down to one simple word, love. Okay? Today I'm calling you to holiness. Without holiness, you cannot live. Therefore, with love, overcome every sin, and with love, overcome all the difficulties. That's a good one. And I'll show you where you can get these messages online. I would like each one of you to discover the joy and the love that exists only in God and that only God can give you. So again, love, love, love. Peace, peace, peace. Okay? It's simple. It's not complicated, right? Why our non-Catholic brothers and sisters don't understand this, I don't understand it. They're missing out, okay? So we're in Ivanka's home, and this is in 1988. By now she's married. She was 16 when it started in 81. Now she's married. She's got a small baby. And we're in her home, and this is being filmed by Paul Millard, who led us on this trip. And here's Father René Laurente, a French Mariologist, world-renowned Mariologist, written zillions of books. There he is in the living room of Ivanka's home with this group of people. We're on the outside looking in, okay? And so I wish we had sound, but we don't, because you'll hear the praying. And so I got to move it through because I want to move through this. It's kind of long, and I want to give you the highlights, okay? So you can see the people sitting there waiting as they're anticipating her apparition event. Again, this is June 25th, 1988. And there she is kind of getting ready. You can't hear it, but what they're doing right now is they're praying the rosary. Okay? I don't have an audio hookup on this, but they're praying the rosary. So they're just everybody in the room is praying the rosary right now in their native language. I guess is it Croatian? Croatian? And her husband and the little baby are standing there, okay? And we're getting close. So again, they're just praying the rosary. And you look at the expression on her face. She just looks normal. Just, they're praying the rosary. There's nothing unusual about the countenance of her face and the expressions on her face, the demeanor. Nothing unusual about it. Until, boom, down. The expression completely changes. You can see the joy. You can see it in her eyes. You can see it in her cheek. You can see her. Everything just changed. Okay? What is she doing? She's looking at Our Lady in a three-dimensional. They described Our Lady as completely three-dimensional, just like you and I are looking at one another. But obviously, those around her can't see her, but Ivanka and the visionaries can see her, and she's having a conversation. Her lips are moving. Her expression is such that she's talking to somebody. We can't see that person. We have to rely on her to tell us exactly what's going on. There's no way this is faked. There's just no way. It's too real, okay? The other thing is, and I never understood why are they happening and going on for so long? Because, how long did Fatima go on? How long did Lourdes? They don't last this long. I didn't understand it. It didn't cause me not to believe because I experienced the grace. And it didn't matter to me what anybody said. I don't care if it was the Pope or anybody. It didn't matter to me because I already experienced it. That was real. So what we're getting here is we're getting, a vision or an insight into what everything that the church is teaching us, the gospel's teaching us, the saints have taught us. We're getting an insight into the reality of what it's all about. Look at the joy on her face. It's amazing. She's having fun. No, we call it joy. But you can call it fun. She's enjoying this. She's really enjoying this. And you can only imagine what her heart must be experiencing, right? And she's talking to her, and we can't hear her. Her lips are moving, but we can't. In some of the early days of this, they hooked them up to EEGs, EKGs. They poked them with needles. By the way, you can't hear it here. At one point in this apparition, her baby starts to wail. Her husband's holding her baby. The baby starts to wail. What would a mother do if her baby started to wail?
Comfort her baby.
She would grab the baby. She never flinches. She never moves. She's in a completely different reality zone. And look at the joy. This is what the messages are. They keep saying the same thing. Pray, joy, love, peace. Everything that everybody in this room would love to have, right? But she talks about the world, and she definitely talks about Satan. He's very real. She said he's out to destroy. You have to understand that. But her message isn't negative. Her message is total positive. She's engaged. It goes on for like, the total apparition is I think around 13 minutes. But look at her eyes. You know, the eyes don't really, there's hardly any blinking. They're just fixed. When they've hooked them up in the medical devices, they've found that their brain waves are in some unusual beta, I think it's a beta state. It's been a long time since I read the book on that. By the way, I had all the books, you know. Why am I into this? Why am I into the Shroud? Because I'm curious. And because I like to understand things. I'm a lawyer judge. So to me, I want to understand. I went to Medjugorje in 1988 because I was curious, because I knew about Fatima. And why wouldn't you want to be curious about something that's beyond our understanding and our comprehension? That's spiritual and heavenly. Why wouldn't you? Why aren't more people interested? Well, they are, because now they're going there in crowds, and people are having all of these experiences, right? So yeah, to me, it was just like, I need to know more about this. What can you say? I don't know. How do you describe it? Look at her. And she tells us a little bit. This is her private apparition. She told us a little bit about what Our Lady had said, and at the end, she had a blessing for all of us that were there, according to Ivanka. You know, it always gets me when I look at the expression on her face and how happy she seems to be. Pure joy. And that's what she's looking at. She's looking at this picture of Jesus with the cross and the rosary. And now we're getting to the point where she's finished. She's almost done, finished with the apparition. Again, I think it lasted for like 13 minutes, the total. And it varies, because the messages are all a little bit different. So now she's up. She's back to normal. She got normal, regular expressions. She wants to grab her baby, she grabs her baby. And now she's explaining what the message was to all of us. And again, the thing is, now she's back to the way she was before the apparition. She's just different expression, different everything. And then the crowds that I was showing you earlier, the crowds in the streets, just massive numbers of people like that. Just massive numbers of people. June 25th, 1988. And I think that's it. Oh, and then I wanted to give you, actually, because I had to move out of the slideshow, my last slide was, you can go to medjugorje.org or medjugorje.ws or Medjugorje website, and they have all of the messages for the last 44 years. You can see them, okay? One last thing. I wanted to read this message because I think this is a good one. She always starts her messages out by using the words, two words, dear children. Okay? Today, I am calling you to prayer and a blessing for all those who have come to know God's love. Big theme in all of this is God's love. Love, love, love. Little children, be different from others and be positive people of prayer and love towards God, that with your lives you may be a sign of God's love to others. I bless you with my motherly blessing and intercede for each of you before my Son Jesus. Thank you for having responded to my call. The end.
Amen.